What happens when you're born into royalty but spend your entire life defending the very people who gave you that title? Princess Beatrice of York knows this reality all too well, and her story reveals a side of royal life that rarely makes headlines. While the world watches her parents stumble through scandal after scandal, Beatrice stands quietly in the background, absorbing every shockwave, every headline, every whispered conversation that questions her family's place in the modern monarchy. This isn't just another royal gossip story. This is about a woman who has shown remarkable resilience in the face of circumstances she never chose, and the emotional toll of being guilty by association in the court of public opinion. From the moment Princess Beatrice Elizabeth Mary entered the world on August 8, 1988, her life was destined to be anything but ordinary. As the first child of Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and Sarah Ferguson, she arrived during what seemed like a golden era for the York family. Her parents' wedding had been a fairy tale spectacle watched by millions, and the birth of their first daughter was celebrated across the Commonwealth. But fairy tales, as Beatrice would learn, don't always have happy endings, and sometimes the most challenging battles are fought not on battlefields but in the relentless glare of media scrutiny and public judgment. The foundation of Beatrice's challenges began crumbling long before she was old enough to understand what was happening. Her parents' marriage, which had started with such promise and genuine affection, began to deteriorate under the pressure of royal duties, long separations due to Prince Andrew's naval career, and the suffocating attention of the British tabloid press. Sarah Ferguson, affectionately known as Fergie, found herself increasingly isolated within the rigid structures of royal protocol. She was criticized for her weight, her spending, her personality, and virtually every choice she made. The media painted her as too casual, too American in spirit, too unrefined for the Windsor family. These attacks weren't just directed at an individual, they were creating a narrative that would follow Beatrice throughout her life. When her parents separated in 1992 and officially divorced in 1996, Beatrice was just a child trying to make sense of why her family was falling apart while the entire world watched and commented. The divorce itself might have been manageable, but what followed was a series of events that would define the York family's relationship with the public for decades to come. Sarah Ferguson's financial troubles became tabloid fodder, with stories about her debts and questionable business associations appearing regularly. Then came the photographs that scandalized the nation, images of Sarah having her toes sucked by her financial advisor while still technically married to Prince Andrew. For young Beatrice, this wasn't just embarrassing celebrity gossip. This was her mother being humiliated on a global stage, and by extension, it was her own family name being dragged through the mud. Throughout her teenage years and early adulthood, Beatrice watched as her mother struggled to rebuild her reputation and financial stability. Sarah Ferguson's attempts at various business ventures, from writing children's books to becoming a spokesperson for Weight Watchers, were met with mixed reactions. Some admired her determination to forge an independent path, others saw her as desperately clinging to her royal connections for commercial gain. Beatrice found herself in an impossible position, loving a mother who was frequently portrayed as the ultimate royal embarrassment while also being part of a family that valued discretion and dignity above all else. She learned early that loyalty to family often meant accepting collateral damage to her own reputation. But if Sarah Ferguson's scandals were difficult for Beatrice to navigate, nothing could have prepared her for the complete implosion of her father's public image. Prince Andrew had always been somewhat controversial, known for his expensive tastes and entitled behavior that earned him the nickname, Ermel's Andy, due to his costly travel habits as a trade envoy. However, these were minor irritations compared to what was coming. When Prince Andrew's friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein became public knowledge, it unleashed a scandal of proportions the royal family had rarely experienced. The photographs of Andrew with Epstein, the questions about what he knew and when he knew it, and eventually the allegations from Virginia Giuffre that she had been trafficked to Prince Andrew when she was 17 years old, created a crisis that went far beyond tabloid gossip. For Beatrice, this wasn't an abstract news story about a disgraced royal. This was her father, the man who had walked her down the aisle at her wedding, who had been present for every milestone in her life, suddenly being accused of horrific crimes. The situation reached its catastrophic peak with Prince Andrew's disastrous interview with BBC Newsnight in November 2019, where his attempts to clear his name instead raised more questions and led to widespread ridicule. His claims about not being able to sweat, about being at Pizza Express in Woking, and his apparent lack of empathy for Epstein's victims struck viewers as implausible and tone-deaf. The interview was such a public relations disaster that Prince Andrew was forced to step back from all royal duties, effectively ending his public role within the monarchy. Imagine watching your father make such catastrophically poor decisions on international television, knowing that every moment would be dissected, memed, and used as evidence of his guilt in the court of public opinion. Beatrice reportedly tried to advise her father against doing the interview, sensing that it would backfire spectacularly. When her warnings went unheeded and the interview proceeded to destroy what remained of his reputation, she was left to pick up the pieces emotionally while also managing her own life and career. The subsequent legal battles, including the settlement Prince Andrew reached with Virginia Giuffre in February 2022, reportedly for £12 million, only deepened the wound. While the settlement included no admission of guilt, the financial payout and Andrew's continued refusal to cooperate with American law enforcement investigating Epstein's crimes created an impression of someone with much to hide. Throughout all these scandals, Princess Beatrice has maintained a dignified silence that speaks volumes about her character. Unlike some royals who might have distanced themselves publicly from controversial family members, Beatrice has remained steadfastly loyal to both her parents. She understands something that the public often forgets in their rush to judgment. These are not just figures in a scandal but her actual mother and father, the people who raised her and loved her. This loyalty, however admirable, comes at a significant cost. Every appearance she makes, every charitable endeavor she undertakes, every professional achievement she accomplishes, exists in the shadow of her parents' reputations. Questions inevitably arise about whether she should be given platforms, whether organizations want to be associated with her family name, whether her presence helps or hurts various causes. The impact on Beatrice's personal life has been profound and multifaceted. Her wedding to Edoardo Mapelli-Mazzi in July 2020 was meant to be a joyous celebration but instead became another casualty of her family's circumstances. Originally planned as a larger affair, the wedding was dramatically scaled back, partly due to COVID restrictions but also undoubtedly because of the ongoing scandal surrounding her father. The private ceremony with just 20 guests at the Royal Chapel of All Saints in Windsor was beautiful and intimate, but it wasn't the royal wedding she might have had under different circumstances. She wore a vintage dress borrowed from Queen Elizabeth and a tiara also loaned by her grandmother, creating a touching connection to royal tradition, but the subdued nature of the celebration reflected the reality that the York family was no longer in a position to demand public attention or celebration. In her professional life, Beatrice has carved out a career in business and technology, working as Vice President of Partnerships and Strategy at Affinity, an artificial intelligence software company. She has also been involved in various charitable organizations, particularly those supporting children and young people with learning difficulties, a cause close to her heart as she has dyslexia herself. These accomplishments deserve recognition on their own merits, yet they are frequently overshadowed by references to her family's situation. Articles about her work almost inevitably include paragraphs about her father's scandals or her mother's past controversies, as if she cannot exist as an individual separate from their mistakes. This persistent association means that Beatrice carries a burden that affects her professional opportunities, her social standing, and undoubtedly her mental health and emotional well-being. The psychological toll of bearing the brunt of parental scandals while maintaining public composure cannot be overstated. Beatrice has had to develop thick skin while remaining empathetic, to defend her parents while acknowledging public concerns, and to forge her own identity while being constantly defined by her family connections. She sees her mother still struggling with public perception decades after her divorce, still being reduced to those embarrassing photographs from the 1990s in headlines and social media posts. She watches her father essentially imprisoned by his reputation, unable to appear in public without facing hostile reactions, stripped of his military titles and royal patronages, existing in a kind of royal purgatory where he retains his title but none of the respect or function that typically accompanies it. What makes Beatrice's situation particularly challenging is that she occupies an unusual space within the royal hierarchy. She is the daughter of the king's brother, giving her royal blood and a princess title, but she is not a working royal and does not receive public funding. This means she experiences many of the disadvantages of royal life, including intense scrutiny and reduced privacy, without the institutional support and protection that working royals receive. When scandals erupt, she doesn't have a palace communications team crafting responses or managing narratives on her behalf. She must navigate these treacherous waters largely on her own, making strategic decisions about when to appear publicly with her father, how to support her mother, and how to protect her own family, which now includes her husband and her daughter Sienna, born in September 2021. The relationship between Beatrice and her sister Eugenie has undoubtedly been strengthened by their shared experiences. The two York princesses have faced these challenges together, presenting a united front and supporting each other through the worst moments. They have both maintained relationships with both parents despite the divorce, and they have both chosen loyalty over the easier path of public distancing. This sisterly bond has been crucial for Beatrice, providing someone who truly understands the unique pressures and painful contradictions of loving parents who have become public pariahs. Together, they have had to make decisions about which family events to attend, how to handle questions about their father, and how to create normal lives for their own children despite the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the York name. Looking at Beatrice's situation within the broader context of the monarchy reveals uncomfortable truths about how scandal and association work within royal circles. While the institution itself has survived and even thrived under challenges, including the drama surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's departure, individual members like Beatrice find themselves in precarious positions. She is too closely connected to Prince Andrew to escape association with his scandals, yet she is too peripheral to the core working royal family to benefit from their protective apparatus. This creates a uniquely vulnerable position where she absorbs maximum criticism while receiving minimal support, expected to uphold royal dignity without the resources typically available to those with such expectations placed upon them. The future remains uncertain for Princess Beatrice and her family. Prince Andrew shows no signs of successfully rehabilitating his public image, and new revelations or legal developments could emerge at any time to reignite the scandals. Sarah Ferguson has experienced something of a rehabilitation in recent years, particularly after her breast cancer diagnosis and treatment, with public sympathy softening some of the harsh judgments previously directed at her. But these shifts in public opinion are fragile and can reverse quickly. Beatrice must continue navigating this unstable landscape while building her own life, raising her daughter, supporting her husband's career, and trying to find meaning and purpose beyond simply managing the fallout from other people's choices. What Princess Beatrice's story ultimately reveals is the hidden cost of royal life for those born into the system without choosing it. She did not select her parents, did not create their scandals, and did not benefit from their most controversial decisions, yet she pays a price for all of it every single day. Her dignity, her silence, and her unwavering family loyalty demonstrate a strength of character that deserves recognition. She represents countless individuals who find themselves judged for family connections they cannot control, who must balance love and loyalty against social consequences and reputational damage. In bearing this burden with grace, Beatrice has shown that sometimes the truest form of royalty has nothing to do with titles or bloodlines but everything to do with how you carry yourself when circumstances would give you every excuse to crumble. The question that remains as we watch her story continue to unfold is this: at what point does a person earn the right to be judged on their own merits rather than perpetually paying for the sins of their parents? If you found this deep dive into Princess Beatrice's untold struggle compelling, please subscribe to the channel for more royal insights that go beyond the headlines. Share this video with anyone interested in the real human stories behind royal scandals, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on whether Beatrice has been treated fairly by the public. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you these in-depth analyses of the stories that matter. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads exploring the hidden truths of royal life.